This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement. The Middle Ground Mike is fighting for truth and unity. Subscribe now or support us today. Links are in the notes. Stand with us. Tonight, I'm finding the middle Sunday edition. We're breaking down Michigan's brand new health and sex ed standards. What's actually changing in your kid's classroom? What's possibly even can be considered fear mongering? And where parents, teachers, and students can find common ground. We'll talk all about these topics: parental opt outs, Lansing politics, and the bigger fight over who controls Michigan's curriculum in your districts. No left, no right forward. Let's see if we can find the middle together today. You know, if you need to see any facts of where we get our information from, go to the middlegroundmike.com, click in the documentation tab, and you will see where we get our information from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, sign up for the newsletter. Tons of information, or you can get some of the gear here, the hat, got hoodies, you name it. Let's dig in. So, we're going to really dig into what actually passed, right? We want to, how does this impact everybody? Because here's the one thing that older people, I'm in my 40s now, so I guess I'm one of them. No matter how you may feel about something, their reality is going to be different than ours no matter what we do, right? That's just part of life, and I know there's like a spot where people want to draw the line here. So, I'm not here to pass judgment on anybody. I'm here to state, hey, where do I see certain things coming with this? What are the facts? Because I've already heard that some people think that the state mandated some of this stuff. From my understanding, and I could be wrong, maybe there's certain scenarios, right? Or a part of it I'm not understanding, but it's up to the individual school district how they want to implement or even do some of these items. So if that is truly the case, which we're going to dig into here, right? If that is truly the case, then it is up to the local people to decide. That means if you live in West Bloomfield or you live in Westland or you live in Grayling, your district makes the choice of what to put in there. So if you don't want certain things in there or you do want certain things in there for your kids, you have to go to your school board meetings. You have to contact your mayor and put pressure, contact the schools. That's where you can make this hit home. So what did we actually pass? The State Board of Education has just updated sex ed standards for the first time since 2007 on a 6-2 party line vote, 6 Democrats, 2 Republicans. These are state standards, not a one-size-fits-all curriculum. Districts will write their own lesson plans and choose the materials. Like I said, the districts are going to be making some of the choices. And I think that that's really, really, really important that people understand. So if somebody doesn't understand that part, refer them to michigan.gov. The information is on there and it'll be on our fact sheet as well. The update recommends teaching about gender identity and sexual orientation, but districts can decide whether and how. So that means they can decide whether they will, and if they do, how. So again, no matter your view, this puts the power in the parents' hands. This means that they can put the pressure on the school district. This is putting the power in the hands of the parents. This is how it should be. The parents putting the pressure, the parents making the decisions. We gotta remember that part. No matter how we feel, we don't have a right to tell other people per se how to live, quote unquote, right? But Grayling shouldn't tell Dearborn something like that, or Dearborn shouldn't tell Muskegon, right? In these certain instances, this is where the parent and the local control matters so much. And I talk about this all the time on, all the other episodes that we record as I talk about state control, right? But when, it comes like this is local, right? There's gonna be certain standards for math, things like that, state level. This is where you get involved. This is where you, the parents, the citizens can get in to protect the kids the way you see that they should be protected, whether it's for or against, whatever. That's where you guys come in. And this is where you really have the opportunity to show that our government works this way. We can make this work, but it takes the voters, the citizens, to step up and put it out there. But there was a lot of heavy public comment. The final version explicitly reinforces that parents can opt kids out of sex ed as required by Michigan law. It is a law, and it is very, very, very clear in here that they can opt their kids out. The state cannot force your kids to do this. No matter which side you're on, the state cannot force it. If you need more information, you can check out my fact sheet, but also go to michigan.gov. The information is on there as well. They cannot force you. Don't let anybody tell you that they can, whether you're for the stuff or you're against it. Nobody can force you according to the state of Michigan law that has been backed up. There's facts, there's receipts, people. Don't get wound up in the what do they call it? Bait rage, right? Or fake outrage. It's manufactured outrage. They're trying to get you guys upset. Tonight isn't for or against. It's about what actually passed. versus what's being shouted on social media. I had somebody that's really, really, close to me literally thought that, oh no, it's mandated. And, me and this guy talk this kind of stuff all the time. And I'm like, is it? I'm like, maybe did I read it wrong? So then I went back and I checked and I'm like, no, it's done at the school board, level where parents can literally put the pressure on, but that's what this is all about. And also remember that it's real hard. I deal with some of these things sometimes too. I'm a father of two myself. It's always difficult. Where do you go with this? Let's kind of go on a little bit, but don't forget to sign up for the newsletter because these kind of things will be on there. Don't forget to go to the website, middlegroundmike.com/newsletter, or go there and click on documentation. But what changes are coming in the classroom and then what doesn't? So the health topics, they're already in standards, right? Some of the stuff is already there, right? You got your puberty, your consent, STI prevention, healthy relationships. The update adds clear language around consent, digital safety, and LGBTQ students. Again, you can reference this stuff on Michigan.gov. It's also on Bridge, Michigan, and WWMT. So there's a lot of resources out there. Don't let people get you worked up no matter which side you're on, because all it's going to do is lead you to hating people that you probably normally wouldn't in any other situation. It's so it did definitely add a little bit more of clear language around the consent, the digital safety. The digital safety is a big one these days because of bullying. We're getting ready to drop a 4-part episode series here on online safety with kids, about how Discord and Roblox have a lot of issues and that they dropped the ball for a long time. And even some of their standards don't quite add up that they put in place to protect kids. So this stuff really is important that aspect, and it should be being taught at home as well as every opportunity we can to teach our kids the right way to protect themselves. But again, these standards, though, they're a guidance. They're not mandates. They're guidance. Local school boards still control whether to include the LGBTQ topics, how explicit content is and what grade levels see it. That's where it really starts to get gray, right? And I'm really big about parents stepping up and doing what they should, but this is something that's got to be reflective of the community and what the community wants. But parents on both sides are going to have concerns, right? Parents that have LGBTQ kids are going to worry about, hate. They're going to worry about discrimination. People on the other side are going to worry about, what they feel is indoctrination, and here sometimes some of those, not most, but sometimes some of these people put videos out there for some of the stuff. It does make it feel like that, right? Especially if you don't have an LGBTQ child or something of that nature. So you got to see where both sides are coming from, because we all live here. We've got to figure out a way to balance this, right? And, but also the number one thing is, you got to make sure we always protect everybody's right to exist. They have a right to exist no matter how we feel about them. Okay. Everybody has the right to exist. That's part of who we are supposed to be as a country and a state. But the parents' concerns are that the gender identity topics will appear at very young ages, or they're going to conflict with family values. And some speakers at the board meeting argued schools should get back to the basics. And I do think that their very young kids should not be getting these type of materials, whether it's LGBTQ or not. Doesn't belong for little kids. It just doesn't. And the fact that we have to keep sitting here repeating this is just goofy. We should not be teaching sex ed and gender identity to kids in 2nd grade, 3rd grade, things like that. No, if the family feels that, teaching this stuff is that important at that age, I wouldn't, but that's their choice to do at home at that point. That's just personal opinion. I'm not, people live their lives. Vote how you want. Tell your school boards how you want to do it. Supporters' views, right? They're talking about, students already encounter gender and sexuality issues online. Age-appropriate, fact-based instruction helps safety. It does help reduce bullying and reflects real families, right? Because as much as if you have a traditional family or if you have the modern family, whatever you want to label it, everybody is facing some of these issues to some degree. It just depends. And we got to learn how to just remember that even if you don't like that person, let them live. Hey, cool. That's Jam, whoever you are. Have a good day. Cool. Move on with your day. How do we separate valid age appropriateness concerns from pure culture or theater that can be put out there, right? Because some of the crazy response that I had first seen was like, they're going to mandate it for all kids. Well, no, that's not the case. If you're that concerned about it, and it depends on your situation, right? Do something about it. No matter the side you're on, do something about it. Show up to those school board meetings. Stop making the government the pure sole decider of everything. Go there, make your voice heard. That's That's just me. I'm all about live and let live. As long as you're not physically hurting me, do your thing, man. But let's move on a little bit, right? But, again, remember, nothing has actually changed in the classroom without your local school board's consent and approval. So if that bothers you, go to the school board. Look up on your city. Go to michigan.gov and you'll be able to find it. Where your local school board is, when they meet, all that good schnaz. We need to talk a little bit about the parental rights versus public education. Michigan law has long allowed parents to review materials and opt out of sex ed without penalty. The new standards underline that right, not remove it. Again, michigan.gov, it's on there. You can find michigan.gov, and it's on the AP News. They give links to where they found it as well. These standards underline that right. They don't remove it. That right is even more defined now for parents to have the option to protect their kids in the way that they see fit. So don't buy into the craziness. Don't buy into the hate from either side. You have the right to protect your kid how you see fit. In terms of opting out, like, you have that right. Conservative lawmakers and groups are arguing standards like this blur the line between education and ideology, calling for more explicit bans of certain content. That derives into more descriptive content, some are saying. And, I think that that's definitely pretty nuanced, and I definitely get where it comes from that. And I definitely believe, like, under a certain age, it shouldn't even be a consideration. But yeah, there can definitely be some concerns there. But again, at the local level, parents got to do what they think is right. Again, Bridge, Michigan, all those places. Civil rights and health groups counter that denying accurate information on topics like consent, STI prevention, and LGBTQ health puts students at risk. I think a lot of this should be very generalized to a point, but if you want certain things with your kids in life, you need to be the one teaching them, right? Shouldn't be up solely to the government to teach them everything. Things that go beyond the basics should be done in the home. Opinion. Not saying that's how it has to be. I'm not against anybody being whoever they want to be, but it should be done in the home. To me, under a certain age, like under 16, it shouldn't even be a question. An important nuance, right? Opting out is individual, but school boards also make district-wide choices. That's why local school board elections have become partisan battlefields. And what does real parental involvement look like beyond just outrage at the meetings? What does that look like, right? Again, if you want certain things, you kind of got to do that part for your kids. It shouldn't be up to somebody you barely know beyond a classroom to do those things. You wouldn't trust them in a lot of other ways to do those things. So why would you to begin with? We even have these debates because we put certain things in the hands of the government that should be being taught at home. But again, that's an opinion. It literally is an opinion. No matter what, respect for all individuals and all life should be mandatory. I guess when you kind of get down to it, public education versus parents' rights, and that's why I can't stress enough. When it comes to that, you have that opt-out part. That opt-out part is very important no matter who you are. The parental involvement can look like opt-out. The parental involvement can look like you're going down to your local school board meeting. Now talk to some of the other parents, like if you have parents that get involved, and if you find some parents that don't agree with you, maybe ask why. Maybe see if you can find some way to find a balance that you guys could maybe somehow come up with some crazy solution nobody's ever thought of to really balance it off all parties involved. I don't have the answer for that, but you, the voters, do. You, the public, do. Make your voices heard at the school board meeting. Don't be silent. You don't got to be mean, be a jerk, cause any crazy either, but help come up with solutions. Don't just be mad. Let's solve the problem. This is how our politics and the curriculum wars intertwine, right? The vote for it was 6-2 along party lines, pretty, reflecting the partisan control of our state board of education, which is, it seems to me to a degree to be unpreventable, but but Michigan education is already under pressure from the federal politics that are going on with the Department of Education, which I am all for of, returning more control to the states, because again, I feel, case in point with Michigan's budget, Republicans and Democrats are able to come together to get something done.
Let's take a quick break.
The Middle Ground, Mike, isn't just another podcast. It's a movement for unity, for truth, for a future beyond the left and the right. But movements don't grow without people willing to stand up. Subscribe now on Buzzsprout. Fuel this mission directly on PayPal. Every subscription keeps the fire burning. The links are in the show notes. Be more than a listener. Be part of the Middle Ground. To get more money invested in education and roads, they were able to come to a conclusion where in Washington, they can't even agree to pay the light bill. So that's why I'm more in for of people at the state level controlling things. It just makes more sense for your everyday life. But, for example, state officials recently clarified that Trump's federal executive order about curriculum won't change Michigan's existing standards on race and gender. That comes from Chalkbeat again. It was on February 14th. Some of these parallel fights, right? The bills in Lansing to restrict foreign influence on curriculum and educational gifts, part of a broader protect our schools narrative, right? That comes from the Huron Daily Tribune. When you look at that a little bit more, right, you kind of you dig into it. It's prohibit the foreign entities, including business people, government people, from buying or acquiring farmland in Michigan after that law take effect. And this is going to apply to old schools, so that kind of does matter. It all kind of intertwines, really. But the big fight of this is curriculum fights are being used as proxy wars for 2026 and the 2028 elections, mobilizing base voters around school kids and parental rights. That's how they're trying to pose it. Remember, some people are going to go parental rights on both sides. Okay, not one's how it's getting presented to people when that same opt-out is still there. That's always been there since most of us were kids. That part did not change. And then if anything, just like I said earlier in the show, it has been even more clarified, more refined, and more out there in front. It's a lot harder for people to even try to block you from opting out. You do have protections for your kids no matter how you feel about the subject. Don't let them make your kids' curriculum to be a partisan election thing. Like, it should be something that you decide with your state, or your state, but your local board, and they should be focusing on solutions. Like focusing on how, New Mexico, we got a show that's going to be coming out tomorrow, a show about New Mexico just implemented universal childcare. Now, a lot of pitfalls there. We don't have some of the energy revenue that New Mexico has coming in. So they're using their energy revenue to pay for it. So obviously it's not as cut and dry, but what are you going to do, right? But we're not here to be another outrage channel. Yeah, we're going to be outraged about people lying about it, but we're here to figure out what Michiganders actually want their schools to do. And again, that should be done at the local school board meetings. Michigan did just pass a record K through 12 budget that includes the free school meals, more money for staffing and student support. But yet the education groups warn the system is still in dire straits thanks to long-term issues like retirement costs. They're having enrollment decline and money diverted from the school aid fund for other uses, roads, blah, blah, blah. But I know this latest budget is really trying to fix that part where education funds are being siphoned for other items. So hopefully we have really kind of nipped that one in the butt, because if it's for education, it shouldn't go for anything else. And the teachers, teachers are burning out, just like a lot of us are burning out in our jobs. The new standards mean more training, and they're already stressed, more expectations, but not always more time or pay, especially in the rural frontline districts. That's where they get hit the hardest. So we really have to make sure we're supporting our teachers the best we can from the parental level, right? We got to do what we can to support them. These fine folks are out there doing everything they can for our kids, whether you agree with the subject they teach or not. They're doing everything they can for the kids. Even if I don't disagree with the teacher, I have really yet to meet one that wants to see any ill will towards any kid. At least from my face, I'm sure, they got opinions behind their backs, but, we're all human. So they're no different. But, chronic absenteeism and learning loss remain the top education stories for this year and for 2025, which directly affects whether the kids will even be in the room for these new lessons. We got, like me, I have that same issue too, right? But we got to get these kids back in the motion. We got to get them back on the horse and get them right to it. We got to stop letting our anxiety overtake us. We can do better than this by our kids. Like, our kids depend on us to be better than this. They really, really, really do depend on us to be better than this. These should be more than just symbolic fights. But literacy and back to basics curriculum push, right? Because we have a lot, like, somehow it's going down. The more money we put in, the worse it's gone. It's that whole cost of, ROI. Separate from sex ed, the legislature is considering bills like HB 4159 and HB 4156 to tighten the state's core academic curriculum and push science-based reading style literacy standards for early grades to really try to help to give them an early jump. Some kids would definitely require a little bit more help. These bills would require K through 6 reading and writing curriculum to meet defined standards with an emphasis on phonics and evidence-based programs. Makes sense, right? I have an autistic son, so, I know that this would be a challenge for him, but, does it mean he gets different kind of help? I don't know, right? But yeah, we do got to really push these things if we want to compete in the world. I'm doing everything I can that I know of and that my wife is. and the great people at a school to put them in a position to win, but we also have to do it for every student as well. Many parents who say just teach the basics are pointing to reading and math performance, right? That's lagging behind national averages. I work in business, right? And I'm telling you, I can see kids out there that are 16. I have seen it where they can't make change for a dollar. It's foreign to them. That's a problem. They don't know how to do the math without a calculator doing it for them. Like all of us have, but like just in general part of figuring it out, they don't have those. That has like really fallen down. And sometimes the hands-on does more than just the screen. And they fear the culture war is content is crowding out core skills. And to a degree it is, right? Whether no matter which side you're on it. Sometimes the culture war issues are overtaking what really gives our kids the ability to live a life, to buy a home, putting them in jobs that are in demand that are going to give them higher pay, better home buying opportunities, but just better opportunities in general, sometimes getting drowned out because we're all worried about our opinions about what someone does in their personal life. Like, if we really want to fix some of these things, get back to the basics, stop worrying about some of that, let people make their own decisions as long as they don't cross certain lines. It seems fair enough. We're not here, remember, it's not our place to tell everybody how to live, but others argue it's a false choice. You can teach literacy and accurate social health content if you fund schools properly and support teachers. Again, that is something that should be done in school at the district level. I don't have enough knowledge to judge anybody on that. I'm not a teacher, so I'm not even going to attempt to be. But, is back to the basics a real plan or just a slogan? Would a basics first, reality, honest curriculum, what would it look like? How would that impact the kids? How would you mesh that with the modern world that they've got to face regardless? How do you mesh that, right? Like parents, boards, teachers, kids, everybody's got to really take a look at that. We deal with some of that stuff here, on a daily basis, in my personal life, and we go that route sometimes. You just got to make the best decision you can and just remember that your decision doesn't mean that it's law. Not an easy pill to swallow, but you don't get to tell the people how to live. Michigan's K through 12 social studies standards already include content on racism, civil rights, gender discrimination, and civic participation. That is according to Chalkbeat. Again, February 14th, 2025 article. A lot of that stuff is already in place, right? And a lot of the protections to opt out of certain things when it comes in relations to this, that protection has been strengthened. So please don't buy into the craziness. Newer resources like Michigan Social Studies Hub, they're helping districts implement updated standards aligned to the C3 framework, inquiry-based civics and history. Inquiry-based, I'm sorry. So there are some of those things out there, but some local districts have gone further with more culturally inclusive curriculum, while others are trying to limit material they see as political, right? Again, that's where that comes in. It's up to, and if that's what the people in that district want, as long as it's not illegal or violate the Constitution, then it is their choice. Just because we don't agree with it, just because we may feel certain kind of way about it, doesn't mean we can tell them how to live. Remember that. The same parents who worry about sex ed often also worry about topics like race, gender, and American history are framed. Of course, students still need the full story to be informed citizens. Again, that's just kind of one of those things, right? To me, history shouldn't be framed. Like, why are we even framing history? That's just complete weirdo-ness. The tie-in question, right, as we really get down to it, can Michigan agree on a shared story of who we are? Or are we writing separate textbooks for red and blue districts? I don't think that's necessarily the case, right? But that's how some people are going to try to view it. Certain content, whether you're red or blue, there should be certain basic things there, right? Like, I don't know of any Democrat or Republican who doesn't want their kid to know how to read, write, multiplication, history. Sometimes they have different views on how that should be worded with history. But the biggest thing is we got to stop like downplaying certain parts of history and just put out there the facts and, make sure we have certain ways that, we want these things to be processed for the districts, and then parents give some of their own take on it to their kids, right? You don't want the school boards determining your kid's opinion. Well, if your kid learns about World War II, they should be coming to you for some context. Mom, dad, what's this or that? Maybe you don't know. Maybe you guys figure it out together. Maybe you guys form new opinions together. Maybe it's a new way you talk and come to agreement, or you could blow up too. But that's how you keep those things to the standard that you would like. Higher education and the downstream impact. At the college level, the University of Michigan just shut down its DEI office. After a Trump era executive order and warnings about federal funding. I got that from Reuters, and it's backed up on federal websites too. And I don't know if I have the right answer for that or not, because that's a tough one. That is a real tough one. If it was coming from just revenue from tuition, things like that, I think it should be up to the state of Michigan. Again, this is why things should be done at the state level, not the federal level. That's kind of about where I stand on that one. had invested around $250 million in DEI since 2016. With measurable increases in first gen and low income students, those programs are now being restructured or cut. Yeah, I think, I got that from Politico, and I think there's a lot of balance being found in some of these restructurings. But there's still some people that are being left out, unfortunately, and we really need to do a good job as a society to protect the people that are going to somehow be affected by this. And what can we do to help support them? And nobody deserves to be put out, no matter who you are, unless you're some kind of crazy criminal. So we really have to figure out how to do that. That means that everybody's got to come to the table and agree that we all have a right to exist. That's got to be first and foremost. So for conservatives, this is a win against what they see as ideological bureaucracy. For students of minority students and LGBTQ students, it could feel like the rug is being pulled out from underneath them, depending on your situation. And like I've always said, like when some people say, hey, they want to get rid of certain benefits and things like this. Well, okay, well, if that's your true feeling, how do you get there from where you're at, right? How do you protect these kids, or how do you change it? That's what you need to do in order to make sure we protect all students involved to the best of our ability. Can Michigan keep campuses open, welcoming, and merit-based without turning DEI into a four-letter word? That's going to be a hard one, and only time will tell. Everybody's doing things a little bit different, so it's kind of like an experiment out there. What the reports are saying out there, what's being said on the internet, what are some of the news places saying that I've seen, right? Michigan education reporters that I've, just through looking around, they're highlighting the chronic absenteeism, the mental health, and the basic safety as the top student concerns for 2025, not just the curriculum fights, right? The mental health. I've said tons. Mental health is a big problem. I have suffered from it in the past. I get it. There is a stigma, no matter how much people tell you there is not, there is one, but we don't do enough to address it. A lot of these violent outbursts come from kids who have had long-standing issues that somehow were ignored. How, I don't know, but somehow they were ignored. How do you address that, right? That's because what the students feel and do too matters, right? Because they're the ones going there, the ones the parents got to deal with. Basic safety, right? You go back to Oxford, things of that nature that happened, and nobody wants to worry about going to school and getting shot. Nobody wants to worry about if you're a teacher going to work and getting shot. And a lot of these kids, when you look at the history behind them, they had mental issues going on beforehand. I'm not saying mental issues are the reason. There's issues with guns and things of the nature, but a lot of these kids, a lot of these individuals have had mental issues. So again, that goes to highlight either A, if they had insurance, they were afraid, whatever, to address it, or there's just not the resources available. How do we get rid of that, right? How do we address that? Because then you start making progress in all these areas, right? Because mental health literally affects everything someone does. So it affects shoe wearing policy to haircut policy. That's what mental health affects. It affects everything from A to Z in people's lives. So if that's that, then that should be a priority. Not telling people how to think, teaching them how to think, teaching them how to be rational individuals. That's what we got to get our mental health system to help them do, and we got to support it better. The surveys nationally show parents across parties mostly agree on wanting high quality academics, safety from bullying, and life skills education, financial literacy, digital citizenship, digital safety, which Michigan is slowly weaving into the standards. But many families of LGBTQ kids are saying inclusive curriculum literally affects whether their kids feel safe coming to school. But the opponents are saying they fear of their own kids being shamed for their beliefs. And this is where, again, I say we have to teach everybody that everybody's right to exist. That's got to be the foundation. And then we can approach this issue, right? So I have a right to exist. So do you. Now let's talk about this, because this right here, someone's saying they're feeling for their safety. They're either A, they do, right? Or B, somebody maybe be giving them that impression. Or C, we're not doing a good job of them teaching that this person has a right to feel that way. And then that person needs to have a right that they have a right to exist too. It's kind of like it all meshes together. It's weird. Seems kind of, it's counterintuitive or contradictory, like however you want to put it, but they both go together. Can Michigan be a blueprint for this, right? Can we figure that out? Because to me, how we were able to get the budget done this year, granted, it shouldn't have come down to that. Pickers need to hold themselves better accountable. We were able to get both parties to agree for things that were important to the voters of this state. Both parties here agreed on issues that were important to the voters of the state. Remember that. We all talk about democracy all the time. Well, Michigan, you did it. You got the House is Republican, the Senate is Democrat, and you have a Democratic governor. You had to make something that matters to everybody to get it done. You had to. So, and we did it, and we got it with record investment, and we took care of kids, making sure they got the meals in schools that they need. I mean, it was a win-win for us as a society to go, hey, Republicans and Democrats, yeah, oh, hey, well, oh, yeah, we both got kids in school. Let's make sure we try to get this right. Now we're arguing a little bit more about the nuances, and that's expected. So good job. But non-negotiables, most people can agree with, right? The actual health info, strong literacy, and math, and physically emotional safe schools. Connect that back to the standards and to funding and to the right to exist. Keep parent opt-outs. That's a no. That's a no. When it's something like that, easy choice. If you're against that, I don't know what to say to you. Require clear, transparent curriculum previews, right? There should be some previews when things like this are coming up. Try to get the parents a little bit more involved ahead of the meetings that people always get cut off on. Get them more involved beforehand so it doesn't turn into this. Build community advisory panels that include parents, teachers, people that are involved with this, and general counselors. Push Lansing to pair standards with real support, training hours, mental health staff, stable funding, not just political press releases, right? We have to kind of tie it in together. Encourage less, ban this, mandate that lawmaking, and more pilot programs where districts can test approaches, then share the data statewide. Like, hey, this works for us. This is what we're doing. Copy it. Don't do whatever you want with it, right? Seems sensible to me. I mean, Michigan doesn't need another scream fest where we just talk rhetorical points all day. It needs a grown-up conversation about what we owe our kids. That's why we're trying to build. That's what we're trying to build here every Sunday, no matter what it is. It's for the kids, everybody. I appreciate you guys tuning in today. Don't forget to go to themiddlegroundmike.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Check us out on Spotify. Really getting our YouTube. Our YouTube is growing. We're really trying to get going with Spotify as well. We are still one of the top end news commentary podcasts on Apple, and this is thanks to all of you guys. Next week we've got a crazy, crazy great episode coming out. I can't even stress how great this episode is that's coming out next week. We are going to be interviewing here on the Middle Ground Mic, candidate for governor of the state of Michigan, Sheriff Chris Swanson, Democrat. But he's coming on this show, The Middle Ground, right? Because man, is he a positive, great person? His staff, make great people. If you don't look at what he did during the Floyd situation, that's how we should all try to approach life. Even keeled, try to get the right thing done. Thank you, Sheriff Swanson. No matter people, your politics, what he did is what we should all strive to do. This is Joe. This is Finding the Middle Sunday edition. No left, no right, forward. Let's have a great week, Michigan.